No human is illegal. Unless you're a hermit, you've probably heard that phrase. How many times have we heard politicians opine about all the basically good undocumented workers coming to America looking for a better life? It's what I call full frontal virtue signaling. They forget to mention the predator classes, don't they? For example, they failed to mention that between 2011 and 2024, 299,000 of those basically good folks were charged with criminal offenses in Texas. Just Texas. That doesn't include the rest of the U.S. Now we hear about foreign nationals who are illegally committing violent crimes against U.S. citizens almost on a weekly basis. So for those who say no human is illegal, my response is maybe some humans should be. This is Brad Bright. Welcome to the God is the Issue podcast, where I show how God is the issue in every issue. Now, in light of that, I would like to test the validity of the slogan, no human is illegal, by suggesting various types of human predator classes that I think should be illegal, like Mexican cartel members, Venezuelan gangbangers, sex traffickers, Muslim terrorists, rapists from Ecuador, Chinese spies, Mexican drug dealers, child molesters, and the list goes on. It seems that anyone who says no human is illegal is saying all these folks I just mentioned should be legal. Now, in my opinion, only a truly evil or terribly gullible person could say such a thing. But just in case you're not convinced yet, let me come at the term, no human is illegal from this angle. Let me replace the word human with the names of specific humans, okay? Victor Martinez Hernandez, a human from El Salvador, entered the U.S. illegally and has been charged with raping and murdering Rachel Morin in Maryland. And then Johan Martinez Rangel and Franklin Peña Ramos, humans from Venezuela, entered the U.S. illegally and have been charged with strangling a 12-year-old girl in Houston. Christian Landi, a human from Ecuador, entered the U.S. illegally and sexually assaulted a 13-year-old girl in Queens. Or Igor Zubko, a human from Russia who was in the U.S. illegally, broke into the home of Shaylee Estes and murdered her. Or what about Eswin Mejia, a human from Honduras, entered the U.S. illegally and committed vehicular homicide against a 21-year-old Sarah Root in Omaha, Nebraska, and then he jumped bail. Or Jose Antonio Ibarra, a human from Venezuela who entered the U.S. illegally and murdered Laken Riley, a 22-year-old nursing student at the University of Georgia. Or Luis Humberto Gonzalez, a human from Mexico, entered the U.S. illegally and shot and killed 29-year-old Ronald de Silva in El Monte, California. Or Cristian Bojena Rivera, a human from Mexico, entered the U.S. illegally and murdered 20-year-old University of Iowa college student Molly Tibbetts. Folks, if no human is illegal, then none of those murderers are illegal because they're human too. You say no human is illegal, I say some humans should be, especially gangbangers, sex traffickers, murderers, drug cartels, and terrorists. And what that means is we have to build a wall at the border. Just like God told the Israelites to build the wall around Jerusalem to keep foreigners out. I grew up in Southern California, and as a young man, worked shoulder to shoulder with many hardworking migrants on construction crews. Many came up seasonally when jobs were available, and then went home to be with their families the rest of the year. By and large, they were good people who simply wanted to provide for their families. They provided both a valuable service to the U.S. economy, and they were able to provide for their families. It was a great symbiotic relationship. But that was then, and this is now. With seemingly weekly reports of illegal migrants assaulting young women and children, with annual fentanyl-related deaths approaching 100,000 a year. Folks, the time has come to seal the border, except to migrants who have been thoroughly vetted. 1 Timothy 5:8 says, if anyone does not provide for his own, especially for those of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Let me repeat that verse again. If anyone does not provide for his own, especially for those of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. It's time we take care of the vulnerable who are already a part of our American family. It's time we protect young American girls who are being sexually assaulted and murdered by foreigners who are here illegally. It's time we slam shut the border to drugs that are killing almost 100,000 Americans each year. It's time we provide good paying jobs for our fellow citizens before we create opportunities for non-family members. Folks, we never want to forget about those in other countries who are hurting, but we cannot abandon our own any longer. And look, despite Pope Francis prattling about that, as he said, quote, not to welcome migrants, it is a sin, unquote. He has still not torn down the wall around the Vatican state, and he still posts guards at the gates of the Vatican to keep foreigners and migrants out. This is a classic case of do what I say, not what I do. It's a classic example of hollow virtue signaling. But I guess, frankly, I'm not terribly surprised by anything he says or does anymore. I mean, for instance, last week he told reporters all religions are a path to God. They're like different languages, different dialects to get there. Some Sikh, some Muslim, some Hindu, some Christian, but they are different paths, understood? Unquote. Yes, Pope Francis actually said that. Pope John Paul would have never said that. No pope who claims to represent Jesus here on earth should ever misrepresent Jesus. You know, the Jesus who said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. Apparently, Pope Francis thinks Jesus was mistaken. The same Jesus he claims to represent. I wonder, does he think Jesus a big fat liar, or was Jesus just not enlightened enough? But I digress. Let's move on. The issue is that some humans should be illegal, folks, and should be kept out of the U.S. Then the most effective way to do that is to build a wall. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I used to support a more or less open border, but that was before certain politicians threw open the doors for terrorists, drug dealers, rapists, and murderers, welcoming them into our American family. Jesus commanded his followers to be as shrewd as snakes, but as innocent as doves. Now, the real challenge is to be both shrewd and innocent, wise and compassionate. Now, Jesus did not say shrewd or compassionate. He said shrewd and compassionate. In other words, showing compassion without wisdom is not following Jesus. Can you imagine Jesus showing compassion without wisdom? I mean, for example, what if Jesus had said to the woman caught in adultery, your sins are forgiven, and stopped there? She never would have had the opportunity to make a better decision the next time. But Jesus always used wisdom when he showed compassion, which is why he said to her, your sins are forgiven. Go and sin no more. You see, Jesus was not a feckless enabler. He was a shrewd and compassionate change agent. What we're seeing going on today, at best, is compassion devoid of any shred of wisdom. See, compassion without wisdom, that is literally killing members of our American family, literally killing young girls, literally killing those addicted to fentanyl. But folks, not only is that not wise, that's not even compassionate. That means we must distinguish between good humans and bad humans before we let any humans in. And yes, it means that some humans should be illegal. So the next time someone proclaims, no human is illegal, simply respond, well, maybe some should be. This is Brad Bright. Thanks for joining me today. If you found this podcast helpful, please like and subscribe. And when subscribing, don't forget to click on the bell so you'll be notified whenever I publish a new podcast. God bless. And may God bless the deserving migrants who come to our shores.